We're going to use periodic and even odd properties to find exact values of each expression. Before we can use our basic identities, we have to have these two angles be the same. So in this case, I can either make them both 400 or both 40. I'm going to choose to make them 40 just to make it smaller. And the period for cosine is 360 degrees. So I'm going to subtract 360 from this, and I get cosine of 40. Remember, we're just going around on the circle. Now I can simplify and use my basic identities and write this as cosine over 40 times 1 over cosine of 40. And that's going to equal 1. Okay, the next one is tan of 200 times cotan of 20. Now for tangent, the period for tan equals 180 degrees. That means it completes its rotation or cycle every 180 degrees. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 180 to make them both 20s. So I'm going to have tan of 20 degrees times cotan of 20 degrees, because I have to have my angles be the same. And then I can just write this as tan of 20 degrees times 1 over tan of 20 degrees using my basic identities. And when you multiply across, you get 1, because tan of 20 divided by tan of 20 is 1. Okay, the next one is in radians, and I'm going to first use my even odd properties. I know that sine is odd. That means I can take this negative out and bring it out front. So I'm going to bring it out front. And this is cosecant, not cosine. Now, I just need to have both of these angles be the same. Since they're not, I can either add 2 pi or subtract 2 pi. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2 pi from this. Well, 2 pi equals 24 pi over 12. So I'm going to subtract 24 pi over 12 from the 25 pi over 12. And that's going to give me 1 pi over 12. So now we have both of our angles the same. The next thing you do, use your basic identities. This is going to be sine of pi over 12 times 1 over sine of pi over 12. Alright, if you put this over 1, these two cancel. This would go into it 1. So your answer is going to be negative 1 when you multiply this across because of this negative. Okay, the same thing we're going to do with this one. However, secant is a even property. So for even properties, I can just change my angle, the sign, to a positive. And then to make my angles the same, I'm going to subtract 2 pi from 37 pi over 18, because the period of cosine is 2 pi. And 2 pi would be, with 18, would be 36 pi over 18. That gives you pi over 18. So now I can write this as secant of pi over 18 times cosine of pi over 18. Now that my angles are the same, I can write secant is 1 over cosine, or I can write cosine is 1 over secant. And what I probably do is just make it different and just write cosine is 1 over secant. You do it either way. So when you simplify this and multiply across, you're going to get 1. Okay, on this one, I know that sine is odd, so I'm going to pull out the negative, and I think I'm going to make everything 20 degrees. So make everything 20 degrees because we have to have the same angle. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and subtract 360 from cosine, because the period of cosine is 360 degrees. So that's going to be cosine. When I subtract 360, I get 20 degrees. Also, the period for tangent is 180. So I'm going to subtract 180, and I get 20 degrees. Okay, now I know that sine over cosine is tangent. So you can either write this as tangent, or you could write tan as sine over cosine. To me, it's easier just to write this one as tangent. And plus tangent of 20. Since my angles are the same, that's just going to equal 0. And the last one is this one. I'm going to go ahead and make all my angles 70 degrees. They have to all be the same. So my sine is fine. I'm going to go ahead, my cosine is the even function, so I could just change that to a positive. I'm going to subtract 360 to make it coterminal. So that's going to be cosine of 70. And then tangent is the odd property. That means I can pull out this negative in front and make it this way. So I'm going to write, this is going to end up changing to negative. Again, I'm just going to write this as tangent. And this equals 0. And that's all. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.